Bijan Khajehpour, as someone who advises international investors in Iran, what do you think this is going to do for your clients?
First of all, it's going to open the huge Iranian market to Western businesses. I mean, it's inaccurate to say that Iran was fully isolated. Iran was still doing a lot of trade, but it was isolated from Western economies, and obviously the implementation of this deal and the lifting of sanctions will pave the way for Western companies to re-engage in Iran. And what it will actually do for Iran is also significant, because one can say Iran was actually buying what it needed either directly from Asian providers or from Russia and other countries, and even sometimes indirectly from Western economies through third countries. But essentially, a lot of the technologies that Iran needed to fully utilize the potential of its economy were actually missing. Missing because Western companies were not there to implement the technologies or to sell the equipment needed. And what we will see, and this is what I tell my clients as well, is an economy that will use the new opportunities to increase its efficiency, to modernize, to upgrade, and to become a much more advanced economy and much more technology-based economy than it was before. And I think this is good for Iran, this is definitely good for the region, and it will definitely create opportunities also for some of the regional partners that we have, especially in the field of energy and gas-based industries.
Bijan Khajehpour, what's your take on this in terms of the immediate impact that this might have on people inside Iran? I mean, is it going to take several more months yet before we see any change?
I agree with Dr. Ziba Kalam that the main impact right now is psychological. And I think, if you want to say it very simply, it's a feeling of returning to normalcy. For not just the past 12 years, for a very long time, the Iranian population has lived under this notion of being, threatened, being sanctioned, and not being normal, being treated as a rogue state. I think a return to normalcy is going to definitely release new energies, release new potential. The psychological impact is important. The real impact from sanctions relief will come at a later stage. We all know that. So the sanctions may start being lifted in late 2015, maybe early 2016, and then the real impact will come then. But the psychological impact is going to create jobs and is going to create an economic momentum. One of the reasons being that a lot of the investment decisions inside the Iranian economy were actually waiting for this. If you looked more closely at the housing market in Iran, for example, that the property market was relatively stagnant because everyone was in a wait-and-see mode. Now that we know that the sanctions will be lifted, now that we know that the government will have more resources to invest, I guess a lot of Iranian investors will engage in property investments. That will create a momentum, that will create jobs. The government will be able to plan more carefully and basically inject some momentum, as Dr. Bazubandi was saying, about investing money into some of the banks and governmental companies. I think there will be an immediate psychological impact, there will be an economic momentum, but the real momentum will come in stages after sanctions are lifted.
Let's talk a little bit more about some of those potential problems then, because statistics show Iran doesn't look like a particularly safe bet as a business partner. Now, Iran is number 171 out of 186 countries ranked for economic freedom by the Heritage Foundation. Last year's survey looks at issues ranging from property rights to entrepreneurship, prosperity and opportunity. And taking a look at corruption in Iran, Transparency International ranking Iran 136 out of 175 countries. This based on how corrupt public sectors are perceived to be by experts, businesses and independent institutions. And how competitive is Iran? From the 144 economies ranked by the Trading Economics Report, Iran ranked 83, dropping from 82 last year. So Bijan Khajehpour, a pretty sobering set of numbers there. It does seem Iran has a lot of work to do in getting investors back into the country and convincing them that that is a good place to be.
Absolutely. The list is much longer than you just mentioned. I mean, it's a very sad legacy of the Ahmadinejad years, of populist policies, and also a very different attitude to corruption, unfortunately. I always argue that Iran had under-the-table corruption before Ahmadinejad, and then during Ahmadinejad it became over-the-table corruption. The good news is that the new government, the Rouhani government, is addressing some of these issues. It's not a secret anymore that there is major administrative and financial corruption, and all top leaders, including the supreme leader, the president, the head of judiciary, all of them have committed to fight corruption and to present solutions. We also have, for the first time probably in post-revolutionary history in Iran, we have a very strong representation of the business community inside the government. I mean, Dr. Nahavandian, who is now the chief of staff, was the president of the Iran Chamber of Commerce and knows all these issues, how government and semi-governmental organizations limit the space for the private sector. It's a tall list. It is important that sanctions be lifted before the government can actually attend to some of these issues, because a number of the issues, especially let's say the opportunities for corrupt dealings, were also a result of these sanctions. We should not forget, when you limit the banking transactions between an economy like the Iranian one and the rest of the world, you basically open the door to money laundering and to corrupt dealings. When you have an economy that has to have multi-tiered exchange rates, you open the door to corruption. So I think the sanctions relief will be a starting point.
Thank you to all three of our guests, Sadiq Zebakhalam in Tehran, Sara Bazubandi in London, and Bijan Khajehpour in Vienna. Thanks very much.